Hello everyone, good afternoon. As you have already heard, my name is Dominika Seblova. I'm an anthropology major and I'm originally from Czech Republic, Prague, and therefore I'm an international student at Macalester College who got to go abroad. As you already heard, I was in KwaZulu Natal, which is a pretty special province of South Africa where, as Annie presented, tradition and modernity mix a lot, and as you can see we have a very similar topic which builds off very well of each other. So just a fast introduction, this is where South Africa is for those who might not know, and that's where KwaZulu Natal is, highlighted right there. I also did my independent research in a very rural area. This is how it looked. It was very empty. You would get to town probably, hopefully once a day, get up at 5 a.m. and it would take about an hour. And that was a town which did not sell books in bookstores, just newspaper or paper. So that was not a real town. I connected to this community through an NGO where I interned during my SIT independent study. And it was a land rights NGO, and this community was evicted for 12 years from their land because there were labor tenants under apartheid, under white farmer. They went through a really rough time living in informal settlement and squatter camp in the town, not town. And therefore they were exposed to both rural and urban experiences which played an important role in their lives. I focused on women because while I was interning at the NGO, I was focusing on women in development and gender in development. Therefore, while I was continuing with my independent study, and I was also really interested in the dimensions of the patriarchal order of Zulu society. And furthermore, I come from all-female family, so it was very important for me to see how women function in different culture, and easier to connect to different women because that's where I socially fit, and those women I could interview and could also fulfill the same role as they did. As for my methods, I did semi-structured interviews with 7 out of the 16 households in the area, and I stayed there for months living with a local family, and that also very significantly influenced my experience and my findings. So what I'll be focusing today is just only a tiny slice of what I'm actually writing about, and I'll be focusing on the notion of amalungelo, or rights, specifically women's rights, and I focus on how do women use the language of rights in their everyday life, and how does it reflect their social context they happen to be in. So when I got there, I did not think that rights will find their way to such a rural area. And then suddenly, in my interviews, women be like, oh, what are you talking about? We have so many rights. We have right to dig holes, for example. Or we have rights to build houses and rights to plaster the walls. And I was like, oh my God, what are all these rights they're talking about? The feminists would be really upset about these rights. What does it have to do with the liberation movement and women's empowerment? Like, it just seems they have more work, and as Annie said, women already carry more of the burden of domestic work than men. So I was like, how does it play? What is this tension between women adopting more rights, more work, and them framing it as a right, and what does it mean for their lives? So that was basically one of my central questions. And what I realized is women essentially have a right to do men's jobs. And so women now can build houses and repair them, and women do take care of cattle, which is very important religious and symbolic significance in the Zulu culture. And they do engage in wage work and in a lot of the male domains. But at the same time, women told me that they did not say men would have right to do this. Men can do this. Men can cook, and sometimes they do, and men can wash the dishes, and men can do laundry. So there was a distinction between right and the ability to do something. And that was something what I found very fascinating, is what does it mean to frame something as a right? And why do men have only the possibility to do so? And I looked more at a historical context and the social context in which the women find themselves. So what I realized, there is an amazing proportion of female-headed households. In KwaZulu Natal, there is 1 million female-headed households compared to 1.4 million of male-headed households, which is very even. And women are traditionally not supposed to be the household heads. It's the men who are supposed to have this power and honor. Yet, due to the history of mine labor migration, which started very early on with colonialism in South Africa, men often migrate from rural to urban areas to engage in this. And this pattern carries on in contemporary era, and men more often migrate to urban areas to find work. And they also have higher chances of employment, unlike the women. Men are more likely to be employed than in rural areas and in urban areas, but still, the jobs they work in are generally, because they maybe maximally completed high school, and the majority of them did not even manage to do that, they'll be working in low-earning jobs and sometimes even in the informal economy. Therefore, they still are not able to earn enough money. And in Zulu culture, men are supposed to pay bride wealth when they marry a woman. And due to the levels of poverty and the inability to accumulate this amount of bride wealth, they cannot marry. Therefore, the women cannot start their own new households and stay in multi-generational female-headed households, often headed by the women. So women find themselves in female-headed households, multi-generational, and in the rural areas. In my specific case, they just returned after 12 years living in informal settlement, and it comes down to someone needs to build a house the family lives in, somebody needs to do these things. Yet, they speak about this as a right for themselves, and what it came down to me was what it emphasized for me. Women say that, one of my informants told me, you know, it was hard life before, and before she meant in apartheid, and before we were evicted, and while we were evicted, and it's a hard life now. But this notion of rights and framing is something as a right gives them a sense of energy and positivism, because the way rights were publicized with the advent of democracy was very positive. Therefore, women maybe don't gain practical liberation and don't gain the release from household work all the time, but they gain a personal sense of positive power and self-worth by being able to do men's jobs and look at it positively, and it gives them strength in their everyday life. Thank you very much for your attention.